Halo Episode 3, Emergence. Did you watch it? Did you not watch it? Well, if you haven't watched it yet, we're going to talk heavy spoilers, so get the hell out of here. And for all of you that have watched it, my first question is, what did you think about the scene where Master Chief makes out with a donkey? I thought it was a little weird at first, but I think their relationship can grow. That was a test. That didn't happen. I told you, we're going to talk spoilers. The last chance to avoid spoilers. Come back and watch this video later. My name's Han, this is Han Talks First, and this is our Halo Reviews podcast. Let's get started.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first.
So if you've watched my reviews of Episode 1 and Episode 2, you know that I'm kind of enjoying the show, even though it's nothing like the original games or the 343 Industries version of the games. It's its own fresh take, it's kind of a reimagining rather than a retelling of the same story, and I'm actually into it. I think it has a lot of creative ideas and nice little twists on the original storylines. Well, this episode finally told us where all these people are going to go in their respective storylines. And oh my god, finally Cortana. I've been saying for weeks, I need to see Cortana, and it was beautiful. Just having the original voice actress come in and do the voice and play the part live action, it really makes a difference. It's the most that I've felt the original Halo touch since the show started. Now, I will say the opening of this episode is the weakest. I thought it was a little awkward, especially with these two kids that we don't know who they are at first, and they just start to kiss each other. And it was kind of a manipulative kiss, if you ask me, because the little boy's just like, when you read the word kiss, that means you have to kiss someone. So it was just awkward and weird. But anyway, there was kind of a MacGuffin in that scene, the book that they're reading called Dawn of the Angels, which might be an Easter egg. Nothing that I can recall, but I feel like it'll play a part down the path. And then, of course, we find out that the little girl is the Blessed One. So I guess that kind of shows she's been manipulated her whole life, and that explains how she got into the Covenant's grips and how she's working for them now. Also in this episode, we got some extra details about the Keystone, which, again, has not been revealed in the games yet. It was, but it was a type of helmet in the games. But in the show, I believe it's Forerunner technology, ancient technology that they use to power the rings. And I think that's where they're going in this TV show, yet they haven't really uncovered that character-wise yet. But we did find out it's over 100,000 years old, predating humans and also predating the Covenant. Again, another reason I think it's Forerunner. But another interesting asset we found out about the Keystone is that it can only be accessed by John, which we knew, of course, but only by pure John, host John, not when anyone else is controlling or viewing his body, not even Cortana. We finally got some more answers on what the little lady in the pod was, and I'm so glad we finally resolved this because I was so confused on how this was Cortana, the Cortana project, how she would turn into an AI, and they finally explained it. But basically what they had to do was they had to clone a full version of Halsey, just so that they can get a copy of her brain. Doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why you don't just clone just her brain, but whatever. And basically what they do with the clone is they take the neurological imagery from her brain and then transport it into the AI to infuse inside of 117. Now, before I get into the emergence with Cortana and Master Chief, which is completely different from the games, I want to talk about something else that the clone mentioned, which I found to be very shocking. So it was confirmed in this episode that Miranda Keyes is the offspring of Captain and Dr. Halsey. Look, I'm not saying there's a problem with the relationship that had happened there. It was just shocking because as a game player, that was not a relationship at all. But whatever, it's canon in the show now. I'll learn to get used to it. I just think it's going to kind of mess up the different character relationships a little. Another thing the clone mentioned was that there are a total of 35 Spartans around, half of which died in the training program, which was around 70, and now there's 35 of them. So I think we're going to meet a lot more Spartans down the road, but right now we only know the 4. And you know me with my Star Wars references, so when they were scanning the brain of the clone, who else saw the Millennium Falcon in that shot? I mean, check this out. Yep, that's totally the Falcon right there. I see you, writers. I see what you're doing. Can I just point out something? In the first episode, when we met Dr. Halsey's assistant, this guy doctor that's working in the lab, he was so annoying to me. I thought it was the worst acting in the world. I mean, there was this one moment when he had to react to something that she said, and he went like this. Give this man the Oscar. Or what do they do in television? Emmys? Give him an Emmy. But in this episode, he just got even more creepier and more annoying because he was like, I love your brain. You're such a beautiful brain. And then he leaned down and he tried to kiss the clone while this dude is obsessed with Dr. Halsey. So anyway, let's talk about Master Chief in this episode. he was out of the outfit for pretty much the entire time, which was kind of a shame because every time he puts on the costume, I'm like, woohoo, Master Chief from the video game, yeah! But look, homeboy got naked in this episode. For no reason. What was that about? I mean, last week's episode, when the Blessed One got naked, that was also for no reason. But this time it was like really for no reason at all. But you know what we did get? We got some of Spartan 117's Master Cheeks. Look, I thought of that on my own, and then I noticed today that a lot of people were posting that, and I got kind of sad because I thought, hey, I came up with a pun, but I guess it's a pretty easy one to come up with. Now, look, we also got shown in this episode that he can be turned on and turned off like as if he's a machine. Only when he's plugged in, of course, but I'm not sure how I feel about that right now. It's just so different from the game. Kind of loses his independence, but I guess they're kind of fixing that because they had what's called this hormonal palate built into the bottom of his spine, which caused the suppression of all his emotions, and he couldn't feel things or experience things as a human would. And we've talked about before how I think one of the key fundamental things about Master Chief in the games is that he's dehumanized and he's more machine than man. And in this one, they're very quickly trying to humanize him by one, showing his face, and number two, giving him so many emotions. And now that he doesn't have that thing in him anymore, it's kind of poetic in the storytelling. I do like it. It's just, again, it's very different from the Chief we know. Okay, Cortana. Let's talk about Cortana and Master Chief together. First of all, when she came up on screen and she was just like, hello, Dr. Halsey, I loved it. It brought me back to the games. It felt nostalgic, even though we've had a Halo Infinite game that came out last year. It was truly magical to see Cortana on the screen. I am a little annoyed that she's physically looks a lot different. And I'm not just talking about the feminine proportions. I mean like the suit that she's wearing, the UNSC suit. She looks a little bit more humanized than she does AI. But I give it to them because the voice is there and they got the original girl to do it. And that makes me happy. That's enough for me. Something interesting about this Cortana model, obviously it's the beta version, so they're testing it out. It's the first one of its kind. She hasn't adapted a certain personality yet. She is more like a Siri or a Google Home assistant, something like that. And the other interesting thing about her is she hasn't grown a relationship with Chief yet. Understandably, they just met, whatever. But what makes this different is they have absolutely zero respect for each other because they talk over each other. Master Chief hasn't even laid eyes on her yet, except for when they were naked and she got to see Master Cheeks. So very quickly, the last thing I want to talk about is when the Blessed One commandeered the other UNSC ship and hijacked it. So look, the little alien worms that were with her, at first, we just saw it at the corner of the screen, and I was like, oh my god, it's the Hunters. It looks like the Hunters' legs. But it wasn't. It was something else completely different. And then when they started boarding the ship, I was like, is that the Flood? But it wasn't the Flood, it was something else. And then I was like, oh my god, these are little penises. Being attacked by little penises. Hundreds and thousands of 14-foot penises raining from the sky. But then I remembered, hey, you remember that live-action Nightfall Halo movie that came out just for Xbox only? They were fighting like the same exact thing on that planet they were on, but they were black worms, but I think it might be the same species just from a different world. Anyway, they didn't even bother explaining what it was. Like, it was just like, here's this new cool thing, accept it. And they totally defined it as not the Flood because later in the show, they said that a plague had terrorized the planet that Chief used to live on. And I was like, plague. It was called Parasite. In the anime, that's the Flood. And look, guys, that was a shitty review. I'm gonna be honest, but those are kind of my thoughts while I watched this week's episode. I feel like next week's really gonna take off. I mean, there's only a few more left. This is a total 9-episode series, so we're a third of the way through right now. Let me know what you thought about episode 3 in the comments below. Like the video for me, it helps out so much. Hopefully you'll come back next week and we can talk about episode 4. Got a lot more content coming to the channel and the podcast. Feel free to check it out. All the links are down below. I will talk to you guys next week. Later.